Happy Friday. Welcome into the Cam Rodgers Show on this April 6th, 2018. I am, of course, Cam Rodgers. Who else would I be? Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. We're sponsored by Mizzen and Main today. I've got you covered for the next hour, getting you set for your weekend. And as always, we will start things off with the latest NFL headlines. Eric Decker, what's the deal with him? Odell Beckham Jr., is he on his way out? And Colin Kaepernick in that ongoing collusion case against the NFL. What's the latest update there? I've got you all covered with all of those stories. And then after, I've got my top 5 teams that are perfect for Colin Kaepernick. So I'll count you down from number 5 all the way to number 1. And of course, golf's biggest stage, the Masters, the 82nd edition, is going on right now. So I'll update you guys in terms of the leaderboard, recap what went down in round 1, and a look ahead to the weekend. And then a final word on the latest surrounding Dez Bryant and his future with the Dallas Cowboys. I have a lot of new information to get to, so I made it its own segment, that at the end of the program. So stay tuned for that on the latest with Dez. But with that, let's get into the latest NFL headlines. And we'll start things off with Eric Decker, who recently visited my Baltimore Ravens. This just yesterday. Now, interesting story considering that Decker has been vocal in a reunion with the Denver Broncos. Now, Decker caught 54 passes for 563 yards and a touchdown for the Titans last year, so left a little to be desired in terms of his production back in 2017, but the Ravens obviously need help in terms of their aerial attack. Of course, bringing in John Brown, he provides a deep threat. Michael Crabtree will likely be that number 1 guy. Decker would certainly be a nice target for Joe Flacco as well, because the Baltimore Ravens, it looks like, don't have a lot of trust in Brashad Perriman, from what I understand. Chris Moore is a wide receiver number 3 at best. So if the Ravens could somehow lure Eric Decker into Charm City, that would certainly mean a lot for Baltimore, but certainly don't write off the Denver Broncos and the potentiality that Decker could go back there, because Denver, of course, drafted Eric Decker. Denver's kind of home to him. He's been vocal about how it's kind of a homecoming opportunity for him. Now, Eric Decker, obviously not the wide receiver he once was, but I still think he is a viable red zone target. And for Ravens fans, they've grown pretty restless with the production on offense, particularly with 2017, and rightfully so. And you can point to many different areas of this. Number 1, Joe Flacco has to play a lot better in 2018. Not just from a production standpoint, but also from the standpoint of actually making the Ravens feel good about themselves with this whole contract and the massive cap number that Joe Flacco has. Of course, cashing out Flacco did after that Super Bowl victory, and for the Ravens, it's been a 3-year playoff drought now. And Ozzie Newsome understands that they got to improve the wide receiver core, and obviously Baltimore is really helping things out there with the John Brown addition and the Michael Crabtree. Perhaps Eric Decker is up next. I do have my concerns about that offensive line for Baltimore, especially with Ryan Jensen center moving on out. So now you got a hole on the interior there. So a lot of question marks for Baltimore as they go forward this offseason, but perhaps they bring in Eric Decker and help bolster that wide receiver core. All right, moving on now to the Buffalo Bills and Richie Incognito. How about this? So Incognito he's one of the greater characters, shall we say, out there in the NFL. He's always an entertaining one. Now, he recently fired his agent on Twitter, and we have a screenshot of the tweet. In a sense, I guess you could say he kind of pulled a President Trump, because I'm pretty sure President Trump fired somebody on Twitter recently as well. So there you go. You are fired. I wish you guys nothing but the best moving forward. Thank you all for your help and guidance along the way. It's time for me to go in a new direction. Now, this could be a really delayed April Fool's joke, or this could actually be a real thing. And I'm thinking it's the latter. I think Incognito actually did fire his agency. Why? Well, you look at the numbers. His base salary got reduced from $6 million to $3 million, and Richie Incognito, isn't a bad offensive lineman. He ranked inside the top 15 according to Pro Football Focus a year ago. So when you see your base salary shrink, that did clear $1.675 million in cap room for the Bills. But maybe Incognito wasn't so thrilled about how this all went down here. So I'm thinking it's an actual thing here, that this is not an April Fool's joke. In Richie's defense, again, he's a good player. There shouldn't be any reason for him to see his base salary reduce. I think the Bills probably should have looked elsewhere for a player that maybe they're overpaying. Richie Incognito, probably not one of those people. But there you go. He took to Twitter to fire his agency. So that's one way to go about it. I wonder if more players are going to start doing that. Maybe that's a fad now. Something to do on social media these days. All right, let's check in with the Browns. A lot of turnover at the quarterback position. Now, the Browns are shopping Kevin Hogan. So, of course, reports surfaced a couple of weeks ago that the Browns are going to shop Cody Kessler. They traded him to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kevin Hogan now on the chopping block, shall we say. The turnover here continues because, of course, Tyrod Taylor is now a Cleveland Brown. Drew Stanton is now a Cleveland Brown, and it's going to be Darnold, Rosen, Mayfield, Allen that's going to be a Cleveland Brown. So 3 new quarterbacks, so they got to get rid of somebody, and Kevin Hogan going to be the odd man out here. 2016 5th-round pick with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he does have some starting experience. He did start last year for 1 game against the Houston Texans. Here's his stat line. 20 of 37, 140 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. So not particularly great. I think he's a career backup. You know, when you're a 5th-round pick, the expectations obviously aren't sky high. And the story goes, of course, he signed to the Cleveland's practice squad after failing to make the 53-man roster, but did eventually become a starter for Cleveland once the Browns were trying to figure out the quarterback situation, and looks like they're revamping things. So Kevin Hogan could be on his way out pretty darn soon. We'll see what happens going forward with him, but he probably won't have a starting opportunity, I wouldn't think, in 2018. This guy will be a starter for the Denver Broncos. Marquette King staying in the AFC West here. Now, my original headline was, well, Denver's interested in him, and, you know, Marquette's agent has been vocal about going to Denver, and, well, I had to change the headline to, it's happening. Marquette King signing with the Broncos here, and reportedly, revenge is a factor in this one, obviously, because of Marquette King getting cut, and, you know, he kind of wants to play in the AFC West and have his opportunity to play a couple of games against the Oakland Raiders in 2018, at least 2 games. Could be a playoff matchup in 2018, who knows. 3-year deal worth $7 million. Marquette King, one of the great characters out there in the NFL, Incognito is one of them as well. So King, another character in the National Football League, and his agent recently said Marquette would love an opportunity to just visit. Well, I guess you can skip that and just go right to the signing. Now, punting for Denver was average a year ago. They were 14th in punting average in 2017. So they had Riley Dixon, his services a year ago, 2016 7th rounder there, and he was serviceable, but I guess Denver was willing to pay up a little bit for Marquette King here. So question for you guys on a little over-under. How many wins for the Denver Broncos in 2018? The over-under is set at 7.5. Give me a heart for over 7 wins, a like for under 7.5 wins there. So you're thinking 7 wins or less, give me a like. If you're thinking 8 wins or more, give me a heart. Let me know what you think about the Denver Broncos, a team that has addressed the quarterback position, I guess, by signing Case Keenum. Some rumors surfaced about maybe C.J. Anderson being on the trade block, looking like he's going to stay there. Perhaps they address the offensive line in the 1st round of the draft. Maybe get a Quentin Nelson and address that interior there. Something to monitor. But hit me up in the reaction poll. I'm seeing a lot of hearts flow in, so maybe some Denver fans watching the Cam Rogers Show right now. Certainly let me know in the comments section as well what you think. All right, James Harrison plans to continue playing in the NFL, ladies and gentlemen. A starter in Super Bowl 52 for the New England Patriots. Not done yet. He's still sipping on the fountain of youth. So Harrison obviously grew frustrated with his usage with the Pittsburgh Steelers a year ago, and the Steelers eventually moved on, and the Patriots picked him up. Obviously a real Patriot move to do that, utilizing Harrison, a veteran, and I still think he can play at a solid level. Now, if he plays in the 2018 season, how about this? He'll join Darrell Green, Jim Marshall, Clay Matthews, and Junior Seau as the only defensive players to play in the NFL after turning 40, Clay Matthews Jr. So I'm confident this guy is going to find a team. I'm thinking that post-draft, when you go through your off-season workouts and all that, maybe injuries happen and et cetera, maybe they look into bringing in James Harrison. I think that's part of his plan as well. He mentioned how he expects to be looked into after the draft and maybe during the OTAs and mandatory mini camp and into training camp in July as well. So James Harrison still going strong, ladies and gentlemen. You gotta love it. All right, now an update here on the Colin Kaepernick collusion case against the National Football League. Baltimore Ravens general manager Ozzie Newsome and Ravens head coach John Harbaugh were recently questioned in this case. Now, why is that? So, this is likely not a coincidence in the fact that the Ravens recently signed Robert Griffin III on a one-year deal. I'll get into the details on that in the next headline. But Harbaugh and Newsome were questioned on their reasoning for signing Griffin over Colin Kaepernick, from what I understand and from what I have gathered here. Kaepernick obviously alleging that the NFL colluded and is continuing to collude, I guess, to keep him unemployed due to his role in the protests during the national anthem. Now, whether or not Cap will be on an NFL team again is one of the more fascinating storylines to me as we go throughout this offseason, because teams are getting desperate at the quarterback position. You saw a lot of bad QB play a year ago from the likes of Tom Savage and Scott Tolzien and C.J. Beathard. I know some of these quarterbacks are young and they're rookies, and you got to give them some time here, but the teams want to win, and perhaps it comes to a point where teams want to see more tallies in the win column rather than, perhaps the potential ramifications of bringing in Colin Kaepernick as your quarterback, maybe via fans getting angry or something like that. I don't really recall a situation quite like this, where, we're talking about a collusion case against the NFL and a quarterback that I feel is worthy of starting in the National Football League, but obviously worthy of being on an NFL roster. It's apparent that this baggage here that the NFL owners are afraid of. And I don't know if this fear of the baggage that they perceive here with Colin Kaepernick is really going to fade away. But I do want you guys chiming in here on the program. Is the NFL colluding against Colin Kaepernick? Is there an actual operation going on behind the scenes where owners are discussing things and saying Colin Kaepernick should not be in the NFL? It's a big-time offseason storyline. And in that vein, I'll be talking about my top 5 teams for Colin Kaepernick a little bit later in the program. Everybody chiming in the comment section. Peter Dean saying starting. He's laughing at me because he doesn't think Colin Kaepernick should be a starting quarterback. Peter, I think he should have an opportunity at least. Tyler in the comment section as well. We have Derek Howell chiming in. Keep hitting me up in the comment section. I do appreciate when you guys chime in here on the Cam Rogers Show. And this NFL collusion case is ongoing, and General Manager Ozzie Newsome, head coach John Harbaugh are at the center of it. Now, whether or not they deserve to be questioned is another story here. Maybe they just felt that Robert Griffin III was a better quarterback than Colin Kaepernick. They have the right to think that way. And so, perhaps the questioning is just part of the procedure that's going on here. The debate goes on, the storylines go on. Colin Kaepernick, the reality is he is still unemployed, still trying for an NFL comeback. We'll see if he can make one happen. Now, the details with Robert Griffin III. It's a 1-year, $1 million deal. Griffin, of course, 28 years old, 40 career starts to his name, 15-25 record with the Redskins and the Browns, respectively. And for the Ravens now, obviously an important signing because Ryan Mallett, their backup quarterback a year ago, was not very good, and he's also a free agent, and the Ravens only had Josh Woodrum backing up Joe Flacco, and that doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence for Ravens fans. So with that, the Ravens initially brought in Griffin to throw to free agent receivers, actually, during a tryout last week, and clearly they were impressed. They signed him, and RG3 has been going with this NFL comeback trend for a while now. He was, doing a little bit of a media tour, kind of like what Johnny Manziel did. So Robert Griffin III is getting his chance in the NFL yet again. We most recently saw him with the Cleveland Browns. Now, right now, the Ravens have to perhaps look at the potentiality that Robert Griffin III could light a little, fire under Joe Flacco's butt to get his, stuff in gear here and his skills in gear for 2018. Joe Flacco obviously did not see Ryan Mallett as a threat. Robert Griffin III is a totally different story here, and I feel crazy actually saying this, but Joe Flacco should be careful. He should watch his six, as they say, because if he doesn't perform well, at least in the start of 2018, and Robert Griffin III starts to impress John Harbaugh and Marty Mornhinweg, the offensive coordinator, who's to say that Joe Flacco, could be in peril of losing his job? I am a Ravens fan. I am confident that Flacco will perform well in 2018. But it's something to monitor here because Flacco has a $24.8 million cap number in 2018, one of the highest in the National Football League. And he didn't live up to that investment last year. Now, of course, the back injury was part of it and all of this stuff. But it's something to monitor here with Robert Griffin III now in town with Baltimore. Joe Flacco better get his stuff in gear here for the next season, and reports suggest that he'll be working with his receivers on his off hours, if you will, not during, the off-season workouts more specifically, but also, on his own time working with John Brown, Michael Crabtree, and perhaps maybe Eric Decker if the Ravens do sign Decker. All right, so Ravens now have their backup quarterback, Robert Griffin III. You're watching the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. More NFL headlines coming up, but first, we're sponsored by Mizzen and Main. These are advanced performance fabric shirts that you will love. Sweat wicking technology, no ironing needed, no dry cleaning needed. Check them out on the website on the bottom of your screen. Comfortable.af. Products made right here in America. Great products at that. They're sponsoring the Cam Rogers Show here today. Now, I saw Tyler in the comments section, one of the great loyal watchers of the program, a Giants fan. So here's some Giants news for you, Tyler. Odell Beckham Jr., what's the latest on the trade rumors? So, from what I understand, it looks like Odell Beckham Jr. being traded seems pretty unlikely. All right, so here are the options that the Giants have in terms of Odell Beckham Jr. They trade him, which I think is unlikely at this point, especially with the Rams acquiring Brandon Cooks. The Rams seem to be the favorite here in the Odell Beckham Jr. trade talks, and, well, they're all set there at wide receiver. Option number two, they can sign him to a long-term contract. Get that extension that Odell Beckham Jr. desperately wants, around $18 million on a yearly salary. That is probably best-case scenario for Giants fans. Option number three is they can kick the can through the final year of OBJ's contract, making a tag-and-sign or tag-and-trade an option for Big Blue. But there's the problem. You're kicking the can down the road. Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't get the security that he wants, and he might even sit out 2018. I'll tell you what, I wonder if Odell and Le'Veon Bell have been texting each other recently, because both of them want to get paid, and both of them, or at least Le'Veon Bell has from his own mouth, threatened to sit out the 2018 season. Now, from Odell's side, it's more of a report. We haven't heard specifically from OBJ that he will sit out in 2018, but coming from a pretty trusted source from NFL Network, it seems that Odell Beckham Jr. will not set foot on a football field if he does not get paid. So it's something to monitor here. I have the 49ers, as you see on the screen, a contender for Odell. I think it's a bit of a reach. I also host the 49ers Report here on Chat Sports, and I was telling all of Niner Empire, it's probably not going to happen. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is going to stay with the Giants. Now, whether or not he gets that extension before the season starts is a whole nother discussion. And it's something that is obviously developing, so we'll see what happens going forward with OBJ. More details, of course, on the Cam Rogers Show next week. All right, now, Eagles. They have a new tight end, Richard Rodgers. It's a one-year deal, and, of course, important in terms of a depth perspective, because the Eagles recently lost Trey Burton to free agency and they released Brent Selleck. Now, Rodgers is a 2014 third-round pick, spent his career with the Packers to this point, played in 63 games with 24 starts with Green Bay, making 120 catches for a little over 1,000 yards receiving and 13 touchdowns. So Richard Rodgers, now a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, which I think is important because of, as you see, the turnover there at the tight end position for Philadelphia. Now, with the Eagles, the defending champions, we have a reaction poll that we want to get to. Over-under here on how many wins for Eagles fans, and, be sure to weigh in here, for the Philadelphia Eagles for 2018. 12.5 is the over-under. So are you thinking over 12.5 or under 12.5 for the 2018 season? So you're thinking 13 wins, 14 wins, something like that? Give me a heart on the reaction poll. If you're thinking 12 wins even or less, hit me with a like in the reaction poll, and be sure to let me know in terms of what you think in the comments section as well if you want to expand a little bit there. So Marcus in the comments section, apparently I crushed your hopes with OBJ to the 49ers. Marcus, I'm not going to write it off all the way, my man, but I'm telling you one thing, it's going to take a lot, and maybe if the 49ers feel like they want to trade away that number 9 overall pick and a 2019 first-round pick, and they think that they can pay OBJ in 2019 or, maybe right now, perhaps that makes sense. But I'm just telling you right now, don't get your hopes up. That's all I'll say. And we thank you for tuning into the program, Marcus. I've seen you comment before, so certainly appreciate that. All right, let's get to some more Giants-related news here. Bradley Chubb recently visited with Big Blue. This went down yesterday. Chubb, of course, I feel the top defensive player in this draft, a true playmaker on that defensive line for wherever he will go. Now, I just think the Giants here are doing their due diligence with the number 2 overall pick. Question I have for you guys, a lot of Giants fans watching the show right now, do you guys think the Giants trade back from number 2? Do you think a desperate Buffalo Bills team calls up Dave Gettleman and says, look, we want that second pick, we want Josh Rosen, trade with us? It's something to kind of monitor here. Now, the Giants also recently put Chubb through a private workout on campus, so something to think about there. And on the depth chart, you could have Olivier Vernon on one side and then Bradley Chubb on the other side at the defensive end position. So that's fairly enticing if you're a Giants fan. And in Dave Gettleman's first stint with New York, you look at the following draft picks: Pierre Paul, Matthias Kiwanuka, Justin Tuck, Ozzie Umenyiora. They were all taken in the first 3 rounds from 1999 to 2012. So Gettleman has a little experience there in terms of going for those big-time defensive playmakers. So I'm almost like talking myself into thinking the Giants are going to go Bradley Chubb at number 2 overall. But that would be pretty crazy, especially considering they'd be skipping out on either Darnold or Rosen and Saquon Barkley. So something to monitor there. And let me know what you think about the Giants trading back from number 2 overall in the comments section here on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. And Tyler, I'm just looking at a comment right now, only if it's a good deal and Sam Darnold goes first. So I'm thinking that could be a pretty likely scenario. I think Darnold goes to the Browns and maybe a desperate Bills team throws a treasure chest at Dave Gettleman and says, let us move up to number 2. And Gettleman says, sure. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's check in with the Tennessee Titans. They recently hosted Bennie Logan. It's kind of amazing this guy is still on the open market. One of these solid defensive tackles out there, and defensive tackle has been a little slow, I will admit that. So Logan had 52 tackles, 1.5 sacks with the Chiefs in 2017. I think he is one of the top remaining defenders out there on the open market. I think he will probably find a team at some point soon. Now, the Titans are pretty solid in terms of their front 7, although they did recently release Sylvester Williams. So you have Logan there on that interior. If they were to sign him, that would help things out on that depth chart. But they have a front 7 headlined by Jarrell Casey, Derek Morgan, Wesley Woodyard. These are fantastic players. Adding Logan as well would certainly be huge. Matt Patricia, defensive mind, Mike Vrabel, defensive mind, the head coach there for the Titans, could certainly help things out. All right, let's check in with the team that is coached by Matt Patricia, the Detroit Lions. They recently signed Matt Cassel. Yes, this guy is still employed. Can you believe it? Now, this makes sense. The Patriots' connections here are abound. You got GM Bob Quinn, head coach Matt Patricia, as I talked about. Matt Cassel has Patriots ties as well. So, not too surprising here. And, of course, it provides some insurance behind quarterback Matt Stafford. How about this for Cassel? This guy has literally been everywhere. Dallas, Buffalo, Minnesota, Kansas City, New England, and now Detroit. So there you go. Matt Cassel is now a backup with the Detroit Lions. Now, this news came out last night. Jordan Matthews now a member of the New England Patriots. So Matthews signed a one-year deal with New England, obviously an important one at that, considering they recently lost Brandon Cooks via the trade that they had with the Rams, and Danny Amendola, who's now a member of the Miami Dolphins. Now, I want you guys all to listen to this. Matthews has quite the injury history, and I'm only going back a year here. So, first point, he suffered a chip fracture in his sternum in his first practice of training camp for the Buffalo Bills. I don't even know where a sternum is. If any medical people in the comments section are watching the program right now, let me know where the sternum is. That's my homework, actually, for you guys. Hit me up in the comments section on YouTube as well as Facebook. Where's the sternum? All right, next. Later fractured his thumb in week 4. Okay, so yet another injury. And then he was later put on IR in November due to a knee injury. So we're talking about a thumb, a knee, and a sternum. All part of the injury history in 2017 for Jordan Matthews. Now, all that said, maybe a change of scenery can help things out for Matthews, and obviously I think he has a real chance to have his most productive year of his career with Tom Brady, the reigning MVP of the NFL. So, you know, you look at his 2017 campaign, career low, 25 catches for 282 yards and a touchdown with the Buffalo Bills. And that's sort of understandable considering that, one, he only played in 10 games, and two, the Buffalo Bills weren't exactly airing it out a lot, and even when they did, they weren't all that effective. So we'll see what happens here with Tom Brady and the Patriots, because I think Jordan Matthews might actually get a pretty solid target share with New England. And just thinking from a fantasy perspective real quick here, if any of you guys play fantasy football, you know, I think Matthews would be a sneaky sleeper. I mean, you look at the competition, yeah, there's Chris Hogan, yeah, there's Julian Edelman, but Danny Amendola is gone and Brandon Cooks is gone, so Jordan Matthews could see his fair share of targets. Philip Dorsett's still on that depth chart too, so we'll see how much target share he'll get with Tom Brady, but Philip Dorsett is kind of regarded as a draft bust at this point, so we'll see what happens there.